Hello, one last time, Shakespeare students. We'll try to get through the rest of these questions best we can. Question number 6. The idea of service is of fundamental importance in the play. Who uses the words serve and service? What does authority have to do with service? Do you see the words pertaining more to issues of family or state? Um, Obviously, probably the character most closely associated with the issue of service within the play is Kent. And interestingly enough, Kent, much like Cordelia, is ostracized and banished basically by Lear. And so one of the key things there is his inability to recognize really loyal service, and the sense that within the play um, there is this issue of obligation, and Kent is extremely loyal and actually risks his life. And curiously, when he comes back as Caius, Lear is quite taken with him, and the natural rapport that they have with one another goes quite well, even though he doesn't, he's not aware, obviously, that he's Kent. He's in disguise, and Kent goes to serve him and takes great personal risk as well in looking out for Lear, and is put into the stocks for his actions and things like that. So there's definitely the sense of the price to pay there. Within the realm of the family, there's obviously this sense of entitlement, and within the Lear family, relinquishing his titles and his status, kind of still he does not accept that he's not going to have the attendant things that go with that, and so there's a sense of being served, and neglecting to recognize that he has no longer has that dominant position when he visits Goneril and Regan. So there's the imposition associated with that. The next question I will read, and I will direct us back towards the forum, because I think there was an interesting comment that Patrick made earlier in the week about this. What is the relationship established in the play between madness and blindness? In what ways are the plights of Lear and Gloucester similar? How are they different? And actually, I can cut straight to Patrick's comment, perhaps. I hope I have it. I have timed out, so I will need to re-sign in. Give me one moment here. And on the question of madness and blindness, Patrick stated, I think both characters end up with an affliction representative of what led to their downfall. With Lear, we see him give away his kingdom to his most wretched and vile daughters. The daughter who does love him, he ends up casting away like a piece of trash. Clearly, Lear is not of sound mind, even before losing his mind. Therefore, what is the purpose of him being sane if what he does is insane? It's ironic that he would turn mad. However, there's also a strange occurrence of Lear becoming mad and becoming more aware of the things around him. When he is out in the storm, he seems to realize something important about the poor people of his kingdom. Poor naked wretches, wheresoever you are, that bide the pelting of this pitiless storm, how shall your houseless heads and unfed sides, your looped and windowed raggedness, defend you from the seasons such as these? How do these people survive in the storm? He had never wondered that before, apparently. Despite Lear descending into madness, he can be surprisingly perceptive of things about him. It is almost as if he's becoming wiser as his madness grows. As for Gloucester, he cannot see that Edmund is manipulating everything in order to acquire the dukedom. Sons are right in front of him. He cannot tell which one is evil with his own eyes. In fact, after losing his sight, that is when he ends up figuring out that Edgar is actually the good one. So his sight was useless all along, since it only served to trick him. In Act 4, Scene 1, when he is blind and he meets crazy Tom of Bedlam, who is actually Edgar in disguise, he is willing to trust him now that he cannot see, but is unwilling to do so when he had eyes. It is rather ironic. In fact, he even says that if he could touch Edgar's face, he would see again. Act 4, Scene 1, lines 17 to 24. This further indicates that his eyes were useless in order to see. In a final note, there's an interesting line by Lear to Gloucester about sight, though. He tells the blinded Gloucester, a man may see how this world goes with no eyes, Act 4, Scene 6, line 151. Lear seems to be acknowledging the fact that his own eyes tricked him and he should not have relied on other senses to see the world. Sight is therefore not essential to life. Is Lear emphasizing the idea that the blinder you are, the better you see? Arguably, you could say that both situations are very similar in that Lear is also blind to the truth of his daughter's love, and Gloucester is mad to cast out his son. The line between between both can be blurry. It would seem that both of these characters' initial blindness led them to madness. However, their plight is different because Lear ends up with a mental affliction, while Gloucester ends up with a physical one. In my reply to Patrick's comment, and something that I can't address this topic without at least considering, I always see a strong parallel here with the Oedipus trilogy. And in Oedipus Tyrannus, the main character, Oedipus, is sighted, he can see, but he's clearly blinded by his hubris, his pride, and blinded by his preconceptions and his sense of his ability to understand and conceive things. And similarly, the seer in the play Tiresias is blind, but he is the one who can see things. And I find there to be a similar parallel in this play. And again, seeing the parallel between madness and blindness I think there's a lot to be said about that. But Gloucester and Lear both suffer afflictions going through the middle of the play. And they are both brought low by them. And they are forced to confront, I think, again, their own pride, their own sense of understanding. And that's kind of a central thing about tragedy typically, is that the way the functioning of tragedy works is that there's an inevitability that human beings are what the great philosopher Martha Nussbaum, in her book The Fragility of Goodness, I believe, and she talks about this sense of how tentative we are. And this is a book, a very interesting book actually, about tragic functioning and how our happiness and our well-being is so tenuous. And because we are human and because we are limited, and basically because we like to assume that we are greater than we are, and typically the protagonists of tragedy have that facet about them, that they see themselves, usually they're kings and great men, right? According to Aristotle, the tragic hero should be a great man at the height of his greatness. Now obviously, Lear is perhaps not at the height of his greatness. He's kind of crested. His greatness is on its waning, maybe. But there's this sense of an overstated sense of self that tends to lead them towards profound misjudgment. And these characters tend to make mistakes, and the mistakes have consequences, and the consequences are usually quite grave. And certainly you see it with these two characters, and you see it again in the Oedipus trilogy, where people are unable to recognize their human shortcomings, and eventually they're forced to. They're brought low to the point where you have to recognize that you are just a human. And even though you're a great king and you have a crown and you have a throne, right? I think it was Montaigne says, the greatest king sits on his butt on a throne. And certainly, all these people are human and limited in some of their abilities to see and do things. And so certainly with respect to this particular episode, Gloucester and Lear, we see a pretty strong parallel, right? Both of them have profoundly misjudged their children. Again, the play is about fatherhood and about those obligations, these fathers, and the sense of also the sequence of inheritance, right? The key thing with Gloucester is that Edmund and Edgar, they're both his sons, but Edmund is illegitimate and Edgar is legitimate, right? Recognized. They're both recognized by him, but basically there's kind of a sense of that difference. Curiously, the natural offspring issue raised there. I mean, Edmund is obviously a bad egg, and similarly, Goneril and Regan are both not what they seem to be, and so Lear and Gloucester make judgments, kind of maybe natural fatherly judgments. You don't want your child to be a homicidal maniac, you hope. And so, they err in their judgments, and they, as I think Patrick mentioned, they discount the truly caring offspring in favor of the other ones. I see I'm overstepping my time here, so I'm going to finish this up, and the rest of the questions will be addressed via our Zoom conference, I guess. So, see you later.